Will you please introduce yourselves, your unit coach, and classroom teacher?
Hello, my name is Sierra Jicklin.
Hello, my name is Ashley.
Hello, my name is David Aguilar.
Hello, my name is Maddie Malath. Our unit coach is Mr. Macaluso, and our teacher is Mr. Clark. Thank you.
All right, we've selected question 2 for you today. What do you think are the greatest challenges of American citizenship today? Why and how does constitutional democracy in the United States depend on the active participation of its citizens? What are the advantages and disadvantages, if any, of being a citizen of both the United States and the state in which you reside?
Ghanaian diplomat and former Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, said in his 2001 Nobel Peace Prize speech, "No one is born a good citizen. No nation is born a democracy. Rather, both are processes that continue to evolve over a lifetime." In a constitutional democracy, the duties of a citizen exceed far beyond an I voted sticker.
American democracy is continually evolving, and it is a simple fact that citizenship comes with obligations and liberty comes with duties. Participation in democracy reflects the will on behalf of citizens, and as American citizens, it is up to us to better our democracy through civic participation so that the processes can continue to evolve and allow for American democracy to flourish.
Sovereignty resides within the people, and with this responsibility, citizens are prompted to vote intelligently on solutions or to decide for themselves how to solve the problems at hand. Though essential, voting alone is not enough. Involvement in local organizations, fulfilling obligations such as jury duty, and staying informed about the problems facing communities are all citizen habits essential to the survival of a true democracy, as they expose citizens to the needs and political processes of their communities.
The 26th Amendment, in response to Oregon v. Mitchell, set the legal voting age for all elections to 18 and assists in this creation of informed citizens. Nationwide, 17 to 18-year-olds in high school government classes are prompted to become involved with their community through service hours, theoretically preparing them for voting, the next step of citizen participation. No one is born a good citizen, but the active participation on behalf of American citizens can ensure that the political system of the United States remains just and progressive.
One advantage of the federal system within the United States is that the power is reserved through individual states through the 10th Amendment. This benefits individual states by letting them decide what is best for the prosperity and well-being of their own state. Same-sex marriage, for example, has been legalized in a domino effect throughout the U.S. In October, the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals heard oral arguments from Subcheek v. Sandoval, Jackson v. Abercrombie, and Lotta v. Otter, and later legalized same-sex marriage in Nevada, contributing to a total of 32 states that have legalized it so far.
A similar effect can be seen with the integration of legalized marijuana in states such as Washington, Oregon, Colorado, and Alaska. This benefit also applies to economic gains. In the state of Nevada, we have the benefits of no tax on groceries or prescriptions, no personal or corporate income tax, and one of the lowest mining taxes in the nation, all of which encourage new businesses and a growing population.
On the state and national level, new challenges to citizenship threaten democracy, the greatest being a general apathy towards voter participation. In the 2014 Nevada general election, only 45% of eligible voters made it out to the polls. Furthermore, those that generally do not turn out don't necessarily want to vote for the available candidates. In the 2014 primary for Nevada governor, the Associated Press reported that despite having 9 candidate choices, the most popular ballot option was none of the above. The decline in participation is caused by the perceived missing link between policies that are voted upon and the impact that they will have upon the lives of the constituents that are voting.
Additionally, despite the flood of advertising that accosts citizens during the campaign season, Congress regarding Citizens United v. Federal Election Commission, the disparity between campaign promises and career conduct further discourage participation. Counterintuitive as it may seem, the solution lies in a resurgence of citizen activism. No nation is born a good democracy. It is a development that requires constant effort and progress, and only through informed citizen participation can challenges such as hyperpartisanship and financially influenced politics be addressed. Thank you.
I'll start. Do you think President Obama's executive action was an effective means to changing citizenship and immigration policy?
While I don't necessarily think it was an effective means of changing citizenship in regards to immigration policy, I do think it was a necessary means. Because the immigration reform bill has been stalled in Congress, President Obama has been left with really no other choice but to try to take some sort of executive action in order to spur really any progress in regards to our broken immigration system.
However, this progress is only temporary because it's an executive order and he only has a certain amount of time left in office.
This executive order is also up for judicial review, so the validity of this argument can be tested within the Supreme Court.
Agreeing with Ashley, an executive order only lasts as long as the president is in office, so the reform will only last until 2016.
How do we increase involvement in local politics?
One way to achieve involvement in local politics is really to start citizens in the United States at an early age. In this involvement, as we brush on in our testimony, requiring service hours through American government classes is a really good way to achieve this involvement in local government. As a personal example, this past election season, I volunteered at the office of the Washoe County Registrar, and I helped be involved a little bit with the election process here in Reno.
Exposing the younger generation to the needs of our community is truly important, and finding their own interest within the community is very important to increase active participation within the government. So for example, I might participate within Truckee Meadows, keep Truckee Meadows beautiful, because I feel the environment is something that truly affects me and I want to make a difference.
Additionally, encouraging students to act on their passions or things that they find interesting that's happening within their communities can further help them act in their community.
Giving students knowledge of how the government works maybe at an earlier age could also help starting freshman year, having them take government classes to learn how our system works.
If you don't mind me follow up that, in your opening statement, you talked about it being a duty. Can you speak more about how we specifically can make this the duty of our citizens?
It's tricky because a lot of that really just kind of comes down to trying to educate the constituents, I guess, of a democracy that to live in a democracy is a privilege, and in order to truly secure that privilege, you have to remain active and remain involved to make sure that your democracy that you have the privilege of living in is functioning to the best of its ability. So, for example, the low voting statistics that we write about in our testimony kind of reflect how over time I think that over time the constituents' interest in voting or in elections kind of tends to decline, and it's very important that you have more important ballot measures that kind of come up and to, I guess, reliven that interest.
This can be seen in the United Kingdom, where the Independence Party has just outweighed the Conservatives because the constituents want something that are more radical, because they support like everything that has happened with Scotland wanting to secede from the United Kingdom.
A government can only, or a democracy can only work if the people are willing to participate in it. If we have no participation from the common public and not the government, a democracy won't function.
On a different track, what would you consider to be our modern civil rights movement?
I would definitely say everything that's happening in Ferguson and the whole racial issues. Would definitely think that's the modernized civil rights movement, because though it's not necessarily civil disobedience in the way the civil rights movement portrayed it, it's definitely a movement to increase, I guess you could argue, equality.
Another issue is gender equality. Right now, women make 70 cents for every dollar a man makes, so gender equality is a huge civil rights issue at the moment.
On a different note, I would argue that environmentalism is a very large cause to which I feel people of my generation should really rally to. This past September, there was the People's Climate March in New York, and there were over 100,000 people in attendance there, flooding, I think, over 40 blocks of New York City in order to protest the inaction that many country leaders have taken towards preventing climate change. As a strong environmentalist myself, I definitely felt that that was almost my Vietnam in a sense. And although I was unable to join the cause in New York City, I still tried to organize a rally in Reno. And so I think that that is an example of how you can bridge multiple states to a certain cause.
As well as the issue of same-sex marriage, which has been prevalent throughout the recent years as seen by the circuit court rulings and has continued to be an issue. I believe that giving same-sex couples the recognition that opposite-sex couples receive should be another thing that we strive to fix and change.
I'm going to go back to something you mentioned in your testimony, which was the choice in Nevada of the none of the above. Do you know how that got onto our ballot, and do you think that it should be on our ballot, or a choice in our elections?
It should be an option on the ballot because people who don't necessarily want to promote the available candidates on the election shouldn't be forced to. So if they don't agree with the standpoints or what one candidate wants to do, or even multiple candidates want to do for the community, they shouldn't be forced to pick one.
If none of the candidates align with their views, that they are still participating by choosing none of the above and still actively choosing no one. If they feel that no one is representative, they are showing that by not giving their vote to a person they don't align themselves with.
Elaborating upon the thoughts of my colleagues, to vote none of the above is an issue of one's rights to free speech because you're basically vocalizing the statement that you're not satisfied with any of the other candidates, and so for whatever reason you choose none of the candidates. So none of the above I feel is an important option to have, although it does reflect the lack of satisfying candidates that we have on ballots.
Another example of this is if a person is a registered Republican and is voting in the primaries, but intends to vote for a person of another party in the official election, then if they choose someone who's running against who they're going to vote for later on, it wouldn't make sense. So none of the above is an option to allow them to say, no, I don't want this person, I want someone else later on.
With globalization, is citizenship irrelevant?
I would say no, because global citizenship, I think, is a really nice marriage between the two concepts, both of citizenship and of globalization. So to be a global citizen is to realize that although you may identify as a citizen of the United Kingdom, of the United States, of China, you're still a part of the human race, and you are still impacted by various foreign affairs and foreign policies that link all of these various countries together. The United Nations is a good example of how globalization and citizenship come together.
An example of the United States globally affecting another part of the world can be seen with the protests going on in China and how they reference everything that's happening in Ferguson, and they kind of drew a parallel between the two.
Another example would be if I were to go to France, I wouldn't be subject to pay their taxes. So those who live, say, in America and are citizens of America are required to pay taxes, so they're benefiting their country. So being a citizen of one country, you help out your country, but you're also part of a global citizen world and the human race. So you wouldn't have to, we all help each other, but in one sense you help your country first.
When is civil disobedience necessary?
Civil disobedience is necessary when individuals or a group of individuals feel the government isn't protecting their rights or isn't representing them in the way they want to be. This can also be seen again with the Ferguson deal. They don't believe that the society or the ruling is very fair, I guess, so there's an uprising with that.
We'll go ahead and stop there.
I really liked your testimony was really well crafted. You have this wonderful opening quote and you use that as a thread throughout your piece, and it's subtle and yet distinctive and absolutely beautiful.
Thank you, English teacher.
But it is really important because it pulls it all together. Even though all four of you are talking about this concept, this thread really works. And the same I felt was with your answers. You answered them nicely with evidence, but they were short enough